So it's that time again. We have our first look at the entire Pixel 11 lineup. And the bad news, well, it looks really familiar to what we've seen before, but hold your horses, there's a little more to this, so let's get into it in this video. If you enjoy this type of content, diving into the shifting landscape of the Pixel lineup and want to stay updated on everything Google, then how about tapping that subscribe button? It helps me out more than you know, and it keeps you in the loop with all the latest commentary. Cheers. So if you've been following the channel for a while, you know that I sort of have a love-hate relationship with CAD renders. On the one hand, I think it's great that they give us a glimpse of the future, but on the other hand, they often lack the nuance of what we'll actually see from the final finished project. However, over the last few days, we've seen a massive dump of information regarding the Pixel 11, the Pixel 11 Pro, and even the 11 Pro Fold. Yes, from these renders, there is a lot of similarity from what you probably already have in your hand right now or in your pocket, which, if I'm being honest, probably isn't going to be a bad thing. Let's start with the baseline Pixel 11, which leaked just recently. If you were hoping for a radical departure from the design language Google has been owning since the Pixel 9, then you're probably going to be more than a little bit disappointed. None of this is a shock though. Google flat out confirmed that big redesigns are not going to be commonplace year over year. So I will say, looking at this first set of renders, I mean, it's obvious that Google is sticking to its guns, which is a good thing. It has a fairly familiar silhouette with those now signature flat sides and rounded corners. Nothing too drastic. The biggest visual adjustment this time around actually seems to be on the rear at the camera bar. On the Pixel 10, we saw a design where the metal frame of the edge of the camera, or the metal bit at the side here, wrapped around parts of the camera island. With the Pixel 11, it looks like Google is going back to a blacked out look here. The entire camera module appears to be housed under a single pane of dark glass, something that was similar to what we saw with the Pixel 6 series. Personally, I think this gives the rear panel a much cleaner, more unified visual appearance. There's also talk of the screen bezels getting even thinner this time around, and this is one of the reasons why I always take CAD bezel measurements with a massive grain of salt, because they're notoriously inaccurate in these early leaks. But if Google can actually trim down those borders, I think it'll go a long way into making the base model feel like a true premium entry-level flagship device. The dimensions of this device are reportedly 152.8 by 72 by 8.5 millimeters, which makes it just a hair thinner than the Pixel 10 from this year or last year. Yeah, last year. I have no idea what that means for future accessories. Probably means there's going to be no backwards compatibility like we saw with the Pixel 10 series accessories and the Pixel 9 series. Moving on to the Pixel 11 Pro, the story is much the same with a focus on slimming things down. The news here is that the Pro might be a hair thinner than the Pixel 10 Pro, which again is probably good news for some of you, might not make a difference to a lot of you who put a case on your phone. The camera bar also looks like it's going for that all-glass look like the Pixel 11, which makes sense. It keeps parity with the design. I think, as I say, it looks really good. But one interesting change here is that there is no room for that, let's be honest, practically useless temperature sensor. Yes, this was added with the Pixel 8 series. It was a remnant of the COVID era. It's being ditched on the Pixel 11 Pro. And I'm glad this gimmick is getting ditched, but it does mean that the LED is now going for a more central positioning. It looks a lot larger in the renders here this time around, so that could mean better flash photos or a better torch, which I'm sure a lot of you use anyway, because night sight's pretty good for taking those long exposure photos in darkness. I actually hope that we don't get any issues with light refraction with this shift away from the metal side section on either device. Visually, this just looks better though. We're also hearing that the Pro will stick with those 6.3 and 6.8 inch screen sizes. No surprises there. I think it seems that Google's kind of found this Goldilocks zone for its display sizes, and I think the company's obviously keen on not moving away from it. I can't quite tell, but the renders here also suggest that we'll get smaller bezels. As I say, take that with a grain of salt. I do think this is going to be a big change if it does come, because let's be honest again, the Pixel 9 and the Pixel 10 have much larger bezels than the competition, especially for a pro tier or flagship level device. I think it would be really nice to see them get snipped or trimmed. I'm really hopeful that this is going to be a change that makes a big difference, especially for the day-to-day experience. Now we have the final device in the Pixel 11 lineup. That is the Pixel 11 Pro Fold, which is, yeah, it's another copy-paste job. The height and width are almost identical to the previous generation, but the thickness is again where the real work is starting to happen here. It's reportedly dropping to 10.1 millimeters when folded, and that's a decent step down from the 10.8 millimeters of the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. When that's folded, naturally it doesn't quite reach the levels of the Chinese foldables out there that are pushing that sub 9 millimeter territory. But yes, thinness is a good thing for a device such as this, especially as you fold it. It's two phones in one. One interesting detail in the fold renders, though, is the camera island. It's still in that upper left off-center rectangular hump, but it looks like the lenses might actually protrude a little bit more individually this time. I do wonder if this is a remnant of the fact that it's going to be thinner. it is a busy design, and I'm not sure it's quite as elegant as that sleek visor on the standard Pixels, but it does, I mean, hopefully that extra thickness does allow for better sensors. Maybe we could finally get the same main sensor as the Pixel 10 Pro XL or the Pixel 10 Pro, 11 Pro, sorry. If they do that, I'm actually all for that. One of the biggest compromises we've had with any foldable has always been the cameras, and I think we're reaching the point where a lot of people out there probably aren't willing to accept good enough for $2,000. So if Google can do that, it'll be a really good step in the right direction. So why is Google being so conservative this time, and why are they using such safe designs? Well, I think we need to look at the bigger picture in the wider industry. I think I've mentioned this in previous videos, but we're moving away from a world where the hardware is the main selling point, because we've hit a ceiling with glass and metal slabs. There are only really so many ways you can curve a corner or polish a frame, as it were. The real battleground, at least according to these companies and the wider tech industry, is AI integration. Google is naturally pivoting the Pixel brand to be more of a Gemini phone. And when you look at the marketing over the last few generations, that's pretty obvious. Not necessarily about the megapixels, the screen brightness, all that kind of jazz. It's about things like Magic Editor, Gemini Live, and extras like real-time translation. By keeping the hardware design consistent, or as Google's own chief design officer, Ivy Ross, puts it, refreshing the design language every 2 to 3 years, Google's creating a recognizable identity. They want you to see that horizontal bar and immediately think Google phone, and therefore immediately think Google AI and software. This strategy has worked for Apple for a few decades now. You know an iPhone when you see one. Samsung, on the other hand, they've kind of struggled with this, or at least did struggle with this, frequently changing the camera layouts and the finishes until recently settling on design over the past few years, and that's worked wonders for them. Google seems to be following this Apple blueprint, kind of establish a look, refine it until they think it's perfect, then focus all your energy on the software experience, which I do think is the key selling point of a Pixel anyway. There's also the practical side of things. Consistency in design does make manufacturing easier and cheaper. It also allows for better accessory ecosystems, which I do think Pixel Snap is hopefully evolving slowly. If they can use the same internal layout for a couple of years, maybe keep the same chassis as it were, they can spend more time on the things that actually matter, which is the shift to AI and potentially the shift to better processors like their own Tensor G6. And on that, the Tensor G6 is rumoured to be built on TSMC's 2nm process, which could be a massive leap in efficiency. We don't know just yet. If Google can pair a more efficient chip, a more powerful chip, with these slightly thinner designs and potentially bigger batteries, as the Pixel 11 is tipped for a 5,000 mAh unit, we might finally see a Pixel that can last 2 days on a charge and be pretty powerful to boot. That, to me, is much more exciting than a new colour or a slightly different camera shape, even though they are exciting in their own way. Ultimately, I do think while these leaks are not setting the touch paper alight, not setting the world alight, they don't necessarily have a wow factor. I think it's just really sensible. It's safe, but it's really, really sensible, especially as the past couple of versions, or at least prior to the past couple of versions, Google's managed to eradicate a lot of the common hardware problems and failures that plagued the Pixel series. I want to ask you, though, what do you think of these first looks? Are you disappointed that the Pixel 11 looks so much like the Pixel 10 series, which we kind of knew ahead of time anyway, or do you appreciate the consistency? Are you actually interested in a thinner Pixel 11 Pro Fold, or are you waiting for a total redesign over there as well? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment sections below. It is going to be a long summer of leaks before we finally see these devices, hopefully in and around August, and I'm sure there are plenty more surprises hidden in the software as well. Cheers for watching, and I will speak to you later.